Hello, my name is Celeste from Black Metal Artist, and today I'm here with the some of the people behind the project, Funeral Witchery. Hello.
Hey there. How's it going?
Now, first question to get started. You guys were formed in Tucson, Arizona. Um, and obviously your music kind of has like a feel like rooted kind of in like vast deserts and like apocalyptic landscapes. How does your environment influence the atmosphere and identity of the band at all?
It's in the way it's kind of, you look at the desert and what would you think of like typical black metal, which would be like, these snowy forests and all that. But I'm like, they're kind of more, they seem so much like opposites that they're a lot alike actually, which is like, the whole desolate, harsh weather, that's outside. And sometimes, you just kind of shut in and just write some music to get out of the intense weather and, what would be sometimes the deadly atmosphere outside of your own home. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that it's an opposite really, aside from like the snow, but instead you have like the heat and the desert. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's miserable. Everybody is upset.
Yeah, showing a new form of being miserable instead of being cold.
Yeah.
Um,
Oops,
now,
sorry.
no, you're okay. Now, Beast Strike Occupation definitely has like a very provocative like themes and imagery, especially even in just the title name. What inspired the concept behind the track, and I guess what message or emotions were you trying to convey?
Well, it was kind of purposely given that provocative title just because, with being in, what you would say is very provocative genre of music in general, that's, almost the kind of pull to it in general. And with the message and the theme behind the song, it's kind of plays into the whole misanthropy idea of, what is normally in funeral witchery, that with all the fighting that's going on in the Middle East, that it's man man cannot help man to save themselves, that it's always one side against the other, and it kind of becomes um reminiscent of pages in the Bible about the end times, with the Antichrist forming his military and taking it into the Holy Land, and it becomes this giant conflict. And so I kind of used those those parallels to kind of talk about that conflict that's going on over there.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have really picked it up in that case, but it definitely makes a lot of sense when you put it that way.
Yeah, and it's coming from the POV of pretty much me being, the Antichrist taking my military into the Holy Land. That's the point of view of the song.
Cool. Now the sound of Funeral Witchery blends a mix of like black metal, obviously, orchestral elements and thrash influences. I guess what are some of like bands, artists, or albums that have the biggest impact on your guys' style? And I would also challenge to mention even another underground artist. I kind of like hearing that more just because I'm curious.
Okay, all right. I guess let me start with the more well known.
Mhm.
I am a very much and like I said, when I mention these artists, like that's however you feel about whatever
Mhm.
controversy around said
Yeah.
people. Sometimes when you play controversial music, sometimes you get controversial people. It is what it is. I'm a huge Inquisition fan. Me and Gio are both dissection fans massively, so that because there are some melodic elements in some of the songs, and even dissection has some like thrashier segments in some of
Yeah.
their, even like the earlier death metal stuff. Yeah. And then I'm a huge death thrash guy, so like Vader immediately caught my attention like early on, just in my life in
Mm.
general. So I was always kind of into their sound. And then, you know, being a Motorhead fan through and through. Like I said, with those bands, I like listen to every single album, as well as there's Watain influence, which is also another influence of Dissection. They're all interlinked in some weird way. Um, was it Shooter from Norway, and that's another kind of big one because I actually had no intention to go this route in terms of sound is like well
Hmm.
produced. But I'm very happy with it. It just I just didn't know we were going to go that route till a little bit later. So I'm fine with, like I said, but um, another for the lesser known influences, well, we have our it's another band actually here in Tucson that is doing something a little bit more dark, weird, dissonant, raw. Is Exul.
Hmm.
Really cool guys. The really interesting project that they're doing. And for Ross, who is our drummer, who is a big part of the recording and mixing process. I know he wasn't really looking at it wasn't the drum influence that he was so much into. He was just kind of playing what he thought the parts called for. But in terms of when it came to, because he was part of the writing the synths and the orchestral elements, as well as mixing like the whole song or the vocals,
Hmm.
that's where he was seeking outside influence, at least. So like
Hmm.
he thought that my vocals, he wanted to kind of mix them like Michael from Opeth's, from that
Hmm.
album, Deliverance. There you go.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
those really interesting ones. Huh. Now the lyrics on Beaststrike Occupation are intense, symbolic, and confrontational. I guess this is more of a Ross question, but if you're able to chime in, that's great. How I guess would you guys approach lyric writing, and I guess what themes are more important for you to explore?
Oh, well, see, I'm actually the vocalist and the
Oh,
lyric
okay.
writer. Yeah, I'm guitars and vocals. That's
Okay.
dude. Yeah, I'm both in the band. Ross was kind of more in the drums and the mixing slash recording
Oh, I
aspect.
see. Okay, okay.
Yeah. In terms of and okay, so in terms of, I'm sorry, can you repeat your question again? I'm
No, you're okay. How do you approach lyric writing, and I guess what themes are more important to you to explore?
Okay. I'm very much a parallels kind of person. So, and it takes me a very long time to write lyrics. That's the hardest thing for me to write, just because I'm so critical of what I'm writing. Because I'm like, well, I don't want to go overboard and be like an edge lord. Because I don't, at the end of the day, it's same thing goes with writing any instrument. You have to listen back and read it out loud to yourself, and be like, is this something I would actually listen to, or is this something that I'm fine hearing read back to me?
Hmm.
Is this still evoking the same emotion that I'm trying to portray? Am I getting my message across? So a lot of it is very much related to, it's like the imagery is more intense sometimes than what I'm actually talking about. So it's almost like at times it can be um like an exaggeration of what I'm talking about. Not to say necessarily that what I'm singing about for B Strike is an exaggeration of the conflict that's going on overseas, but
Yeah.
it's a different kind of fight, but like I said, I'm pulling the two similarities of it together.
Yeah. I think those are really interesting parallels to bring into. Um, Now you guys have released several tracks in like a short period of time in 2026. What are Were these songs written as part of like a larger vision or concept, or do you feel like they evolved separately?
I mean, they're all gonna be on that album, so it was kind of just more the whole idea behind releasing the singles was just because Funeral had been on a break for a long, long time, just because it was just a massive lineup change. I'm the only original member left,
Mm.
and it was more just to show people, hey, we're actually starting to get moving again. Because with the original lineup, we were playing a lot of shows and doing doing stuff, and then like I said, we came to just like a big hole,
Yeah.
and now this was like, hey, you know. Keep now that we were in the back of your minds, let us be at the forefront of it. The carrot in front of the donkey or whatever.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think that's clever in that way that you're kind of like bringing yourselves back, especially from what you had before. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Now can you tell us more about the creative process between you guys as members? And how do you kind of each contribute to the final sound?
Okay. In terms of the writing process, I'm always very much a person that I like to be alone when I write. I rarely like to try and come up with something in the moment. I always try to stay away from doing that just because you know, it's nice having a drummer there when I'm writing something, but it doesn't really give me a chance to think about where this is going to be in context and what I want to do in the long run of the song. It's just like, oh yeah, this sounds cool because I got my drummer here and my other guitar player or whatever. But it's more so that I can really think about where I'm going to emphasize certain lyrics at, how how I would want the song to be portrayed because I can play a riff the same way every time, and the drums, whatever the drums decide to do, can change the entire way you're going to perceive the song. Whether
Yeah.
you're doing, just a single foot polka beat or double bass with, a hi hat and a snare at, quarter tempo or, so that kind of changes, how the song's going to come out. So I like having the time by myself to just think about it over and over. And then with writing lyrics, same thing because I'm just hypercritical. I love simple music, but it's so complicated for me, right? Um, and then uh, for I Ross is he's always been pretty good at just writing it in the moment, but I like when he does, when he does take the time to like play it a little bit more and practice. He has a very just different writing process. So I can't
Mhm.
always speak on his behalf all the
Yeah.
time. From what I've seen, he'll take it, he'll play it, and he'll have like a general idea, and then the more we start playing it and practicing it, he'll start, refining it.
Awesome. Yeah, I like hearing, especially the different styles and stuff like that you both guys have. That's great. I think it's always nice to have like the differences kind of combined.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I guess regarding like some of the production and how like regarding that sound for Beast Strike Occupation, it feels like both raw and cinematic. How important was it to kind of have that balance?
No, to me, it was like a really big deal because it's not so much that I like hate produced music or anything, but it's just I didn't want to be like an overproduced project, Like I didn't want to, yeah. I wanted it to still feel like really organic, almost like kind of the way you would hear it live, pretty much. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
yeah, me and Gio, we drill how much we play that song live to just get it to sound, a 1-to-1, Yep.
Oh, for sure. That's awesome though. Um, Now, you guys describe funeral witchery as like a sonic paradox. What does that phrase mean to you, and how does it define the band?
Um, as far as a paradox, I mean, I'm not the one that wrote the description. I would just say if I were to describe us as anything, it's almost like we are what's the word for it when two opposite things are just like true at once, finding in our sound, it still has this, like really raw, aggressive aspect of it. But then at times it could also have, these, almost kind of melodious cinematic aspects of it where you're finding the beauty and the beast inside of a recording.
Yeah.
And so that would kind of go into, your question about, how important was the, the production aspect of it, finding the balance, right?
Yeah, for sure. Which it's a very nice balance, especially for people who like rawness and black metal. And also like I guess getting a bit of both from listeners who might like one or the other.
Right? Yeah, like it was for me, it was finding that middle ground, especially because I'm a person who I don't have any problem listening to either or.
Hmm.
And but for me, I'm like, all right, this is kind of what I see us succeeding the best in terms of sound.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of as like a final question here, with the releases that you guys have so far, what can listeners expect next from you guys as far as this year goes and beyond?
As far as what to listen to when it comes to the album, I one of my favorite parts about, I guess, the at least the way that I write is I don't like to make all the songs super derivative of each other. And
Hmm.
not no shame to someone who has like their sound and they like to stick to that because that's cool. But I like my songs to not you're always gonna get something different every time, kind of more or
Yeah,
less. Even if it's, reusing, whether it be the same kind of production or whatever my very limited vocal style or guitar talent might be. But
yeah,
it's getting, a song that just feels very different. You're like, oh yeah, this is definitely extreme metal. It's just, it's not just like a one trick pony or one note kind of, band. Gio, do you want to tell them what we're gonna be up to later this year?
Yeah, so come towards the end of this year in November, we have a tour lined up.
hmm,
That's really what we're looking forward to right now. It's going to be a great time, and it's going to be really badass to show everybody, how hard we've been working, and they're going to get to hear how close to the recordings that we're going to sound live. That's like the number one thing.
Stints and all.
Yes, since and everything. Um, and it's going to be a great time. Like I said, we're very excited. That's like the number one thing we're definitely looking forward to this year is that tour and the release of the album.
And then we got something else coming late April that we're doing. It's we're doing a live music video
Oh yes, yes.
for just one single that's gonna be on the album that we're gonna bring a guest singer and we're gonna record it and then get, not only the audio but the camera footage of it as well. So that'll be our next little almost like music video, but it'll be like a live single. And in the future, if we're really stoked with it and maybe we want to release it as a single or something later to listen to uh easily on whatever streaming service, maybe we'll do that.
awesome. Well, that sounds all really exciting, and I definitely wish you guys luck whenever the tour comes later this year. But yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you guys, and I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Celeste.
Thank you.